Welcome to the Round Hill Art Center Virtual Art Lessons. I'm Eric Scott. I'm the program manager as well as an instructor at the center, and I will be bringing these lessons to you. So today we're going to focus on something kind of simple. I think it's a fun, simple activity to do. It's all about creating your own coloring sheet. Now you can go online, you can download all kind of different coloring sheets from different places, and especially now there are lots of free things out there that you can download and you can use, but I think it's much more fun when you can actually make your own. So I'm going to share with you a very simple technique for creating your own coloring sheet. Don't worry if you feel like you can't draw or you can't draw really well. This is just a very simple technique. It's not the only way to do a coloring sheet, and you can draw anything that you want. But the nice thing is that since it is going to be a coloring sheet, it's something that you can share. You can share it with your family, you can share it with your friends, and I'll talk about that at the end, about how you can take this coloring sheet and share it out and allow other people to use what you've created. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So let's go ahead and let's dive into it, and I'll kind of show you what you need and we'll get started. Okay? So for this lesson, you're just going to need two very simple materials. You're going to need some paper and you're going to need a black marker or pen. So I have a black permanent marker, a Sharpie. You can use any kind of black marker. I just find that the permanent marker works really well. It has a nice tip, has lots of ink, and the nice thing is that it's not gonna change if I decide to color it in with other kinds of markers. So it's a permanent marker, so you do want to be careful. It can bleed through your paper. So I'm using a kind of a thick, heavy drawing paper. It's a little bit bigger than printer paper, but if all you have is printer paper, then by all means feel free to use your printer paper. And one word of caution with the Sharpie, you might know that Sharpie bleeds through paper. So that means that it soaks through the back and it can get on your table. Now I have an art table here. It's got some paint and other things, so I don't mind if a little bit of the Sharpie bleeds through. But if you're working at your kitchen table or your dining room table, you might want to keep that in mind. So I want to go ahead and dive into doing our coloring sheet. It's a very simple technique, and like I said, if you feel like, oh, I can't draw, don't worry. This is a technique that anybody can do, and so really encourage everyone to try this out. So I'm going to start off. I want to create a border, and a border is just a frame that's going to go around. I could just draw very straight lines that go around, but I'm going to maybe change it up a little bit. And what I want to do is I don't want to start very close to the edge. I want to bring it in a little bit, and I don't want to come in too far and then have a really big fat border and just have a small area in the middle. So if I start out, a little bit in and then just kind of follow along, and then maybe I want to curve, but you can have a nice sharp corner if you want. Maybe the sides of my frame, my border, are going to be slightly curvy. And then this one's going to be a little bit straighter. And the sides are curvy again. And I try to keep it the same distance, an even distance from the side. And notice that I'm going slowly. So I find that sometimes people try to go real fast with the border, and one border is really big and wonky and just doesn't kind of work. So I've got this border, and that's going to allow me that when I scan it and print it, that nothing gets cut off at the edge. And now I want to think about how I'm dividing the space. Now you could draw anything you wanted in here, but I'm just going to show you a quick technique, easy technique, one that I like, that's a lot of fun to do and that's a lot of fun to color it in. And what I'm going to do is break this space up. That means I'm going to draw some shapes, some lines, and the rule is, the idea is to start at a black line and end at a black line. So here right now I just have the border. So if I start up here, maybe I'm going to do a wavy, squiggly line. And maybe it's going to come over to here. And so I stopped there, and I had started there. So I can also start at the line that I just drew. So maybe I want to do more of a jagged line that comes across this way. So start at a black line and at a black line. I can also cross the lines. So maybe I want to do just a more curvy shape. And notice how I crisscross that. We also call that overlapping. And I want to break this space up. I want to divide this space up into some big shapes and some little shapes. I don't want to do 16 million bazillion little shapes because then that just becomes too many. But I want to have a variety, some big shapes and some little shapes. I don't know if there's like a perfect number to do. That's kind of for you to decide. But just enough that I'm going to have a nice variety. And if you look at this, it starts to look like a puzzle, doesn't it? And the idea is I'm going to fill each of these spaces in with a pattern. Okay? So I can use any kind of pattern, and a pattern is just simply something that repeats itself. I don't have to do the pattern straight across the shape. I can kind of bounce it back and forth. So maybe for the first one, I'm going to do a polka dot, a circle pattern. So if I just draw a circle, and then I can draw some little circles as well, and then some big circles. And so this is still a pattern. It's not a very even pattern. It's kind of an all-over pattern. And even some of the circles, I'm drawing them so they kind of go out of that space, so only parts of them are showing in. So some big shapes, or some big circles, some little circles. Now, I could do a totally different pattern in each one, but what I like to do is I like to repeat my pattern. So I think I'm going to take this polka dot pattern and maybe repeat it over here and fill in this space. So this just kind of reminds me to take my time to draw slowly and carefully. What I find is that sometimes I get in a rush and it's almost like, oh, I'm in a race and I've got to do this really quickly. But if I take my time, it's going to be neater, and then if I share it, it's going to be easier for people to color it in. So just taking my time and making sure that I'm completing the shape so that the line comes around and touches and completes the shape. So a polka dot there, and then maybe over here, maybe in this little shape as well. Okay, so I've got 3 polka dot shapes. Now, let's think about other kind of patterns. So I could use other shapes. I could do squares in this pattern and triangles in this space, but maybe I want to change it up a little bit. So maybe I want to use some stripes, so using some lines. I'm just going to do some straight lines. Actually, maybe I'll do a big stripe and then a skinny stripe. A big stripe and then a skinny stripe. Or maybe all the stripes are the same size. But again, it's your paper, so you could do any kind of pattern that you want. Okay, so again, I don't want to just leave that one there. Maybe this time though, maybe the stripes are going to go up and down. So it's going to be the same type of stripes, a big stripe and then a skinny stripe, big stripe and a skinny stripe, but maybe they go in different directions. They don't always have to go in the same direction. And maybe one down here, maybe this one's going to go diagonally. So using lines is a great way of creating a pattern, something that's repeating itself over and over again. But then I could have lines that just sort of go in every direction. So maybe I want to do a jagged pattern here. And what I'll do is I'll just do some kind of jagged lines that crisscross that space, that overlap. And this is a very uneven, irregular pattern, but I'm repeating that jagged line. And because that one's in the middle, maybe I want to leave it there. Maybe I don't want to repeat it anywhere. Okay, so there's that one. Now maybe I want to do a different kind of pattern, maybe something that's a little bit closer. So some of these have some big spaces. Maybe I want to do something that's a little bit tighter together. So I'm going to do stripes again, but this time I'm going to do skinny stripes. But I'm going to do 3 or 4 stripes, and then I'm going to change the direction. So here I was changing the direction in different spaces. Now I'm changing the direction in the same space to create a different kind of pattern. So I'm repeating horizontal, vertical, and diagonal lines, these stripes, doing 3, 4, 5, and that's going to create a really interesting pattern. This is one I've been doing a lot lately, and I really like it. But I like how close together the stripes are. So there's a diagonal. Maybe this one's going to be diagonal in the in the opposite direction. Maybe there's going to be a horizontal one there. Vertical here. Let's see, diagonal in the opposite direction. Okay, so again, I'm going to repeat that somewhere else. So maybe I want to repeat it down here. So I can start out, maybe I'll do a diagonal. I'm going to go from edge to edge in that shape. And again, 3 or 4 stripes. So I drew 4 lines, but I have 3 stripes. Maybe do one more and have a 4th stripe. And then thinking about like, oh, there's going to be vertical stripes. All right, so if you haven't figured out, if you can hear in the background, I've got some dogs. So that's the lovely part of working from home, is that sometimes your dogs and cats get in the way, but that is part of life. Okay, so some vertical and horizontal stripes. There's some horizontal, maybe diagonal. Let's see. Let's do another diagonal here. Now I'm looking at this space and it's kind of big, so I think I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And that's the thing. This is my creation, so I can do that. So diagonal, now some horizontal. Diagonal in the opposite direction. Diagonal in a different direction. Alright, maybe some vertical. Alright, so just doing different directions. Okay, maybe do horizontal this direction, different directions. So some vertical, now diagonal. So I'm just repeating those stripes over and over again, different directions. I just like how it's filling that space up. Okay, so I've got 2 of those spaces, and the lines are just a little bit closer together, so they're just a little bit darker, kind of stand out a little bit more. So now I need some other shapes, some other, not other shapes, other patterns in these shapes. So maybe I want to do a jagged, but maybe what I'll do is do this jagged one. And maybe I'll repeat kind of like the stripes. Up and down, up and down. So just trying to fill all the shapes with different patterns. And then whenever I turn it into the coloring sheet, then whoever's coloring it in can choose however they want to color it in. Okay, maybe do that same zigzag, but maybe do it in a different direction up here. Okay. And then maybe do it one more time over here. Maybe I'll do it more of that diagonal. Okay, so I think I've got one more space to fill in. And down here. So I think what I will do, I was just going to leave this one here, the zigzag, so maybe I'll just fill that in with that random crisscrossing zigzag line. Just do that a couple times, few times in here. Okay, so it looks like I'm done, but I do want to do one more thing before I call this totally done. If I look, it might be a little bit hard to see those first lines that I drew in that created all the shapes. So I want to maybe thicken my lines, make them a little bit bolder, and I'm going to start by doing the border. I'm going to go around the outside, and you can just see how that thicker line just makes it a little bit more bold, just makes it stand out more. And what I'm trying to do, I'm not trying to hold the Sharpie straight up and down. I'm going to try to hold it more at an angle and to get a thicker line, and I'm trying to draw right beside the line that I already drew in. And then maybe as I'm doing this, I can see some spaces where maybe I need to go back and fix things. I will say that as you're doing this, it's always a good idea to have a nice, fresh, juicy Sharpie, just because you don't want to get partway through and have the Sharpie start to run out of ink. What I find, then it kind of turns gray, looks real faded. You don't get these real nice dark black lines. So that's something to kind of think about as you are working. So I didn't do such a great job up here at the top of getting close to that border line. Okay, and then go through my spaces here. This also, thickening this line helps me go back and maybe cover where I've accidentally went out of the space with my patterns. Because even if I am drawing very slowly and very carefully, there are little spaces where the pattern kind of pokes out into the space that's next to it. So this kind of helps me clean those spaces up a little bit. Okay, go all the way down. Again, I'm just trying to make a thicker line on these outside edges of these different spaces. And it's just going to make them stand out. And so having the thick line next to the thicker line or thinner lines just kind of makes it look a little bit better, because you have a little bit of a variety, the thick and the thin lines. Alright, so I think I'm almost done. I think I've got one more line here. Oop, nope. I missed one. This one right here. So it's always good when you feel like you're done is to kind of look it over and say, hey, did I miss anything? Is anything kind of messy? Do I need to fix anything? Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So there, I have my coloring sheet. So something that I can share. Now, how do I share this? Well, you're going to have to scan it in. So there are different ways to scan it. You can use your phone to take a picture. If you have a scanner at home, you can scan it in there. And the nice thing is then you can print it out. So let me show you one that I did earlier. So let me change these out. So here's one that I did earlier. And again, I use some of those same patterns, but some different patterns as well. And so thicken my lines around, and then I scanned it and I printed it out. And you notice that the paper is a little bit smaller. So I was drawing it on drawing paper, which is a little bit bigger than the printer paper. And then when it printed out with a bigger border. And that's just the way it printed out. So the nice thing is I printed out not just one copy, but now I have 3 copies. So if I wanted to, I can color it in on the original, or I can keep that so that way I always have it, and then I can color in. Maybe I try out different color combinations on each one. Maybe I have my family members do it, or if you want to share it with your friends, there's something else you can do. So once you have it scanned, you can do lots of different things with it. You can put it into the computer and color it on the computer, or you can send it to your family and your friends and be able to share it that way. So sending it through email, and then allowing your family, your friends to print it out, and then they have their own copy of your coloring sheet. And the nice thing is, if you get your friends to do it and your family to do it, and then you can send them back and forth, and then before you know it, you all have lots of different coloring sheets that were created not by some stranger, not of your favorite cartoon characters or video games, but created by your friends and people that you care about, and you can share what you've done with other people. So I hope you've enjoyed this lesson, this quick, easy lesson on how you can create your own coloring sheet with 2 very simple materials. And if you happen to do this lesson and you create, we would love to see it. So make sure you share it with us here on our Facebook page, and we would love to see it. Thank you so much, and happy creating.